Hello, Professor here. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. In this video, I am going to cover advanced play for deuce to seven triple draw and Badugi. I'm actually wrapping both of these up in the same video because a lot of times tournaments that you're going to play are going to incorporate both. They're usually going to be a mixed triple draw of some sort, or they might be a big bet mixed dealer's choice, for example, at the World Series of Poker. So these two games are two games that I absolutely love. A lot of people misplay them, and they're also good games for mixed games because they're a good way of generating positive EV, more money in your pocketbook, whether you're playing limit or pot limit. Now, I'm actually going to cover both in this video. So in deuce to seven triple draw, the key of the whole game is to get the wheel or the lowest possible hand, which is the 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Aces are considered high in deuce to seven triple draw, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 is considered number one or the best possible starting hand. Of course, number two would be something like 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and so on and so forth, and I'll get into the quality of hands there. In Badugi, your best possible hand is ace, 2, 3, 4 different suits. So the first thing I'm going to dive into is I'm going to cover deuce to seven triple draw and what you should start with, things that you should keep, and strategies that you're going to use both in limit and in pot limit. And I'm going to cover Badugi afterwards. So first, let's dive into deuce to seven triple draw. Now, the key in deuce to seven triple draw, very much like the key in pot limit Omaha, is what kind of starting hand will you have. A lot of people will say position matters, which it does. The button is extremely important in this game because you have the ability to increase the big bet size by one after all the draws are made. You have the ability to bluff and things of that nature. I'm not going to get into bluffing at this point in time. I'm going to dive into starting hands for deuce to seven triple draw and why they're important. And for deuce to seven triple draw, if you're out of position, meaning you're the small blind, big blind, first to act, because usually these are games that are going to be six-handed. Sometimes you'll find them being seven-handed. What's really important is you start off with an 8-6-X or an 8-X-X, that are 3 to an 8-6 low. That's one of the biggest things. If you're taking notes, you want to take a note here. 3 to an 8-6 low. Now, what does this mean? This means if you have an 8-7-4, those are hands that, yes, in fact, you will fold. Those are hands in tournament style that you're going to fold. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, Professor, that's crazy. Now, one of the golden rules in deuce to seven triple draw is don't leave home without a deuce. There are a few exceptions to that. For example, if you start off with like an 8-6-3, those are hands that you can continue with. But if you start off with like an 8-6-4, maybe not, because the reason why is because you end up having the possibility of hitting a straight. And if you hit a straight, that's a high card, and then you're stuck, and then you don't know what to do. So one of the most important things is to start off with an 8-6 low or better, or if you start with 2 to a deuce 7 or a deuce 8. Again, the reason why the deuce 7 or the deuce 8 is important is because you are drawing to not a straight card. Now, I know what some of you are saying, Professor, what if I start off with deuce 3? Obviously, if you start off with two of the wheel cards that include a deuce, like deuce 3, deuce 4, deuce 5, those are all cards that you can continue on provided that you're in position. So if you're in position, for example, if you're on the button or if you're in the cutoff, okay, cutoff is the position right before the button, these are okay to start with. 2 to a 2-7 low, 2 to a deuce, say 2 to a wheel, 2-5, 2-4, those are things. If I have 2-6, believe it or not, player dependent and position dependent, I might actually fold that hand. I know you're gonna be like, what? That is a hand that I will contemplate folding, okay? If it's only one bet to me and I'm on the button, chances are I'm probably gonna see it, but if there's a raise and a 3-bet, which most deuce to seven triple games there should be, that's a hand that I'm simply going to pitch most of the time. Again, it's very player dependent on that particular junction. Now, this is all concerning limit deuce to seven triple draw. When you get into pot limit deuce to seven triple draw, the starting hands are going to primarily be the same, 3 to an 8-6 low. The difference is when it comes to having 2 to a wheel, like a deuce 5, a deuce 4, a deuce 7, those are hands where on the initial bet, I am going to pitch and draw 3. And some of you might be saying, this is absolute insanity. Well, the reason why is because it is pot limit. The amount of money or the amount of big blinds that you can acquire on the river are gonna far outweigh what you're betting initially on the flop. Now, one of my rules when you're playing pot limit deuce to 7 triple draw is you need to improve every draw. So for example, say you start off with a 8, let me erase some of this really quick. So say for example, you start off with an 8, 5 deuce low, and you're out of position, your opponent draws 1, and when your opponent draws 1, how many cards your opponent draws will signify their strength in their hand. Deuce to 7 triple draw and Badugi are one of the few games that purely signify your opponent's strength in their hand, okay? But say, for example, you start off with an 8-5 deuce and your opponent draws 1, okay? When they draw 1, you have to assume they're on some kind of 97 low or better, okay? So after you draw 2, you end up with, a jack and a 10. Are you going to continue and draw another 2? No, I'm completely done with this hand at this point. Now, there are times when you start off with an 8-5 deuce and you draw 2 and you end up with something like a miracle 3 and a 6 right away. Your opponent is not going to believe you. And I'm going to say this again, your opponent is not going to believe you in many instances. Okay, when you draw 2 and then all of a sudden you stand pat and you bomb it, they're thinking to themselves, well, he drew 2. Was he drawing to a 9-6 low? Was he drawing to a 9-7? Whatever the case may be, the nice thing about pot limit deuce to 7 is you can literally turn it on its head and start pressuring your opponent to make bad decisions. Because if you're sitting there and you have an 8-6-5-3 deuce low after drawing 2 and you pulled 1, and then you go ahead and lead out and bet a pot-sized bet, they're gonna call you because they're like, well, I don't really believe this guy. You stand pat. They go, whoa, now all of a sudden I believe this guy, or maybe I believe him a little bit. I'm still gonna pitch 1. Because at that point, even if they're drawing to a 9, they're probably, this is very player dependent, going to feel that you might be snowballing them and that they're gonna see if they can hit their 9. And sometimes when they hit their 9 and you catch up, they're gonna pay you off. Or for example, if you're drawing to like a 7-6 low or drawing to a wheel, things of that nature, people will end up paying you off in pot limit deuce to 7 triple draw. So this is one of those situations where it makes a lot of sense to pull 2 and maybe, like I said, always improve. Now, Badugi. This is another game that is 4 cards and the nut is ace, deuce, 3, 4 different suits. There's a couple important things that you need to know about Badugi since this is an advanced Badugi video. If you start off with a pat Badugi, okay, against the field, even if it's a jack 9, it doesn't even matter what it is, a queen X, X, X. If you start off with a pat Badugi, your chances of winning, depending on your opponent's hand, is somewhere between 48 to 52%. I know what you're saying. All right, Professor, well, that's great to know. So you're basically saying it's a coin flip. Sure, if you want to jeopardize your entire tournament life on a coin flip, sure. But here's what you need to know about Badugi. There's a vlogger last year who did the Badugi tournament and got really frustrated because his opponent kept drawing 2 when he was drawing 1 and his opponent kept beating him. And that vlogger didn't understand why his opponent was doing that. If you are drawing to Badugi, there's limit Badugi and then I experienced pot limit Badugi, 2 different strategies. But generally speaking, if you're drawing to a Badugi, what you want to start off with is a 4-5, 2 to a low, or 2 to a 4-5 in different suits. Okay, if you can start off with that or 3 to a 7. Okay, those should be your starting hands. I'm going to let that sink in just for a minute. Those should be your starting hands. If you start off with the 4-5 low, there's going to be some times that you're going to get there and you're going to beat them. Now in Badugi, one thing that's important to note is if you have a 3-card Badugi, a 3-card low, it beats other 3-card Badugis, whoever has the lowest of the 3 cards. If you have any 4-card Badugi, and a Badugi is different suits, spade, heart, club, and diamonds, any 4-card Badugi will beat any 3-card Badugi. So some of the things that you need to know as far as starting hands is you want to start off with a 45 low if you're drawing 2, or 3 to a 7. Now I know what some of you are saying. Professor, what if you have a 9-pat Badugi? All right, well, if you got a 9-pat Badugi, that's probably something I'm going to hold 9 times out of 10. Haha, get the pun. But if you have, for example, say for example you have a Jack, 7, Ace, 4 Badugi, and you're out of position. This is actually something where in a lot of cases I'm going to pitch the Jack. I'm going to let that set in for a minute. A lot of cases, if you're playing limit or pot limit, I'm going to pitch the Jack, okay? And your starting hands in these 2 games is just as important, if not more important, than they are in pot limit Omaha, as well as no limit Hold'em. So again, if you're looking for advanced play on Badugi or advanced play on deuce to 7 triple draw, I'm hoping that this video finds you well, because your starting hands is key. After that, it becomes very player dependent. It becomes very table dependent. Is the table really super loosey-goosey because it's the start of a tournament and you're on big bets? Now, the big bet tournament that I played down in Hollywood, Florida, I busted out like the 4th hand on pot limit Badugi. I had an ace 3-5 Badugi. My opponent drew 1, and he bet a very small amount on the river. I think it was like 3,000 into like a $15,000 pot, and I potted him just to apply pressure because I had another 3 and another 5 go through my hand, and I paired. So I was thinking it's pretty unlikely that he has a better Badugi, even though I have a 3 card. If he's got like a 4 card Badugi with like a 10 or a Jack, he can probably lay it down. And the guy had a 7 Badugi, so obviously he called. And I busted out, but I immediately rebought, because in the beginning of a tournament and big bet tournaments, when you're dealing with deuce to 7 triple draw and Badugi of the pot limit variety, those games tend to be the bloodiest. Those are the ones that'll bust people out right away because people are uncomfortable with them and they're not sure what to do. So if you're playing the big bet mix at the series this year, your starting hands are going to be key. 45 low to a 2 on Badugi, or a 7 low with 3 to a Badugi, or on deuce to 7 triple draw, you want to stick to an 86 low and never leave home without a deuce, particularly if you're on the button. It just gives you so much more power. After that, whether or not you bluff really depends on the cards that come through your hand and the cards and the amount of cards that you draw. And this is one of those things where a lot of players don't factor in, okay? And what I mean by this is, say for example, you're playing deuce to 7 triple draw, and say you start off with deuce, 7, 7, and let's just say you start off with 8, 8, okay? This is a hand, and I know what some of you are thinking, Professor, I'm probably gonna keep the 8, 7. I mean, sometimes player dependent. In a situation like this, because I have 2 7s and 2 8s, I'm probably gonna keep the 87. But if I started off with a hand like deuce 7, 7, let's put in another 7 and a 9, I'm definitely pitching the 9 in both of the 8s, and I'm keeping the deuce and the 7. The reason why is because I know 2 of these cards are already out of the system. Now on the first pull, say I pull another deuce, but then my hand improves to something like this, I don't mind continuing, because here's the thing. It's less likely you're going to pair, and it's more likely your opponent's going to pair because they don't have these deuces and these 7s. You have to account for that. So on the next pull, I'm probably going to pitch the deuce and the queen. At this point, if I don't improve, I'm done with the hand. If I don't improve to an 8, a 4, a 5, or a 6 out of 2 draws, then I'm completely done with the hand. If I get a 9, it becomes a maybe. It becomes very player dependent, position dependent, whether or not you're playing limit or pot limit, and based on your opponent's previous raises and things of that nature. Same thing over here. In Badugi, if you start off with, say, ace, 5, 7, queen, but they're all hearts, okay? This is a hand that I'm actually going to continue with because there's only 13 hearts in the deck. I'm gonna pitch the ace, get rid of these three, and I'm at least gonna see one more street. And I know a lot of people, when they see you pitch 3 cards in Badugi, start laughing. They start thinking this guy has no idea what they're doing. Or for example, if you have a hand like deuce, 7, 7, 7, X, and there's 3 bets, this is a hand that I am going to continue with even on 3 bets. And I'm going to hold 2, pitch 3. The whole table's gonna look at me like I'm nuts, but I know it's really unlikely I'm gonna get another pair of 7s, and it's also unlikely my opponent's not gonna get a 7. So keep that in mind when you're playing these games. You start off with 4 to a suit in Badugi, it's unlikely your opponent's going to get a heart. If you start off with an ace or a deuce or a 3 in Badugi with 4 of the same suits, it's okay to continue if you're in position and there's a single raise, or if there's 1 raise and you're in the big blind, it's okay to do it. But yeah, this is some advanced play on Badugi and triple deuce to 7 triple draw. I hope again this video finds you guys well. If you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe. If this is your first video of mine that you're watching as you're preparing for the series or you're preparing for mixed games, I have a whole slew of mixed games, a whole slew of classroom settings for my mixed games. But I figured I'd wrap both of these up in here. Well, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think this is a little too conservative? I've had some people who say, it's a little too conservative, but truly, 4-5 to a 2-card Badugi, or 3 to a 7 Badugi is really where you want to start because you're making your opponent draw and you know you're ahead. Again, Badugi is one of those games where if you draw 1 and your opponent draws 2, well, you know you have 3 suits and you know they have 2 suits. So, and then when they mix these games in and they get into Badusi and Badesi, becomes even a little bit more fun, but apply the same principles. If you're playing a game that has it combined, combine those principles. For example, if you're playing Badusi, don't start off unless you have 3 to a Badugi plus 3 to like an 86 low. So I hope this, again, video finds you guys well. And hopefully I'll see you guys at the series. Hopefully you guys will be playing the big bet mix. I'm definitely playing either the 15 or the 2500. I think for my package I have the 2500 slotted, but I might play the 1500 just for funsies. Just depends on what's going on that day. So play smart, everybody, and run like a god.